Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Okay, today we're diving into some really fascinating stuff, like a seriously ancient riddle about, well, reality itself. I'm excited about this one.
Me too.
A while back, someone sent us this text. It's called forintroduction.pdf, and, well, it lays out a really unique perspective on consciousness, how we're all connected and what's actually real.
Yeah, it's not like, a dry philosophy textbook or anything. It's more like an account of like this incredible personal transformation from like 3,000 years ago,
Yeah.
almost like a foundational myth or something, but with all these ideas that sound so surprisingly modern.
Exactly. And that's kind of our mission for this deep dive. We want to try to unpack these core ideas, for you listening. We're going to look at this ancient take on reality being like fundamentally light and the idea of like a single universal living being and, well, this really captivating smoky mirror metaphor. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll have some new insights into how you perceive and experience the world.
I love it.
So let's jump right in.
Yeah, let's do it.
This story starts with a human being living near, like, a mountain city about 3,000 years ago. Just someone like you or me, right?
Exactly. This wasn't someone, just born into mystical understanding or anything.
Yeah.
This person was actually in training to be a medicine man,
Hmm.
like totally immersed in the traditions of their culture.
Right.
But the thing is, they had this deep feeling of like incompleteness, this nagging sense that there's this whole other level of reality that they just weren't getting.
And that all kind of culminates in this super pivotal experience. So they're sleeping in a cave and they dream about like their own sleeping body.
Whoa.
Right. And then under the light of a new moon, everything changes. They have this huge realization and they say, I am made of light. I am made of stars.
Wow.
And it's important to note here, it's not just like a poetic idea, like, we're like stars. It's more like they're claiming to be like fundamentally made of light.
It's almost like a complete flip in perspective, right?
Mhm.
Like instead of stars being the source of light, this ancient idea is that no, light is actually primary. Light is the fundamental thing.
Wow.
It's like light creates the stars, they realize.
Huh.
And it's kind of interesting, right? Because some modern physics theories also see energy as like the fundamental currency of the universe.
Yeah.
And even though like the language is obviously super different, this whole idea of like a foundational interconnected substance, it's really intriguing.
Yeah, it is.
And this leads to the statement, everything is made of light and the space in between isn't empty.
Right. And then that connects to this mind-blowing concept of like the one living being.
Yeah.
So the text says this person came to understand that everything that exists is like connected. It's not just a bunch of separate things, but like one giant unified entity, which they call God. And light, this like fundamental element, is seen as the messenger of life, containing all information. So it's not just energy. It's like the carrier of meaning, of the fabric of existence itself.
Yeah, it really paints this picture of a universe that's not all fragmented and broken up, but
Yeah.
like fundamentally whole, right? This unified field of something like consciousness, with the light being the medium for that consciousness, carrying all the information that makes up reality.
Wow.
Pretty wild stuff.
Okay, so we've got this foundational picture now. Everything's light, everything's interconnected as one living being.
Uh-huh.
But then the narrative gets even more interesting because even though this individual has realized they're made of stars, they also say, I'm in between the stars. And this is where the idea of the tonal and the nagual comes in. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. So think of the tonal as the manifest world, like the stuff we see and touch, the stars, our bodies, everything that seems solid, defined, knowable. It's like the information that's already been expressed, right?
Right.
Manifested.
Okay.
And the nagual, that's the realm of the unmanifest, the space between the defined stuff, like pure potential, where everything comes from.
Got it.
Kind of like, if you think about it, like potential energy versus kinetic energy in physics, but applied to consciousness and reality.
Right. Okay.
And the text emphasizes that these two, they're not separate, right? The toner and the nagual could not exist independently of each other.
Right.
And then life itself is described as like the force of the absolute, the supreme, the creator that creates everything, the energy that brings both these realms to life.
So we've got this foundation of everything being light, interconnected as one living being, with a manifest tonal side and an unmanifest nagual side. But then the story goes deeper into perception,
Yeah.
how we experience this reality. And the individual comes to this conclusion, quote, Human perception is merely light perceiving light. Oh,
Whoa.
right.
That's pretty mind-blowing. It's like our senses, they're not just passive receivers.
Yeah.
Our ability to perceive, it's not just us getting information from a separate world out there. It's more like an active interaction,
Huh.
like light resonating with itself.
Yeah. And that leads to this idea of matter as a mirror, right?
Exactly. Like the chair you're sitting on, the phone you're using, it's all just light reflecting other light.
The text states, matter is a mirror. Everything is a mirror that reflects light and creates images of that light.
And that reflected light, that interaction, it creates what the text calls the world of illusion, the dream. Like smoke, which doesn't allow us to see what we really are.
And it's not to say that, like, the world around us isn't real in a practical sense, right?
Mm.
But that the way we perceive it, it might be hiding a deeper truth. And that deeper truth, it says, is that the real us is pure love, pure light.
Really makes you think, huh? It suggests that there's this essence, this core nature to us that goes beyond our everyday experience of ourselves.
Mm.
Like we're not just separate individuals in a material world.
So how did this realization, how did it change the individual? The text says they started to see themselves in everything.
Yeah, it talks about a moment of like profound unity. He saw himself in everything, in every human, in every animal, in every tree, in the water, in the rain, in the clouds, in the earth. It wasn't just an idea in his head. It was this deep feeling of being connected to everything.
And it goes on to say, life mixed the tonal and the nagal in different ways to create billions of manifestations of life.
Yeah, so all the diversity we see, it's just different combinations of this fundamental light and potential. Like, think of it as an artist using the same basic colors to make an endless variety of paintings. Same stuff, but infinite expressions.
But then there's this challenge of trying to explain this experience to others, right? This guy, he's had this huge shift in understanding, but he can't really put it into words.
Yeah, the people around him, they could tell something was different, but they couldn't really grasp the message. It must have felt pretty isolating.
It also really highlights, how limited language can be. Maybe some things just can't be fully explained with words.
Right. And the most interesting part is how others react to him. They think he's like an incarnation of God.
And what's really interesting is how he responds. He says, "It is true. I am God. But you are also God. We are the same, you and I. We are images of light. We are God." But even after saying that, they still didn't understand. Like, their whole view of reality was just too different.
Yeah, it really shows you how big of a difference there can be in how people see the world. Like, you can say something that's true for you, but if the other person doesn't have the same framework, the same experiences, they might not get it.
And that brings us to this central metaphor, the smoky mirror. Why did this guy start calling himself that after all this?
Well, he realized that he was like a mirror for others, reflecting their own being back to them. He could see his own essence in everyone he met.
Huh?
But the thing is, nobody saw him as a reflection of themselves. And that led him to this idea that everyone was basically dreaming, but without awareness, without knowing what they really are.
And he says this lack of recognition, this inability to see ourselves in each other is because of this wall of fog or smoke between the mirrors. What is this smoke, though?
Well, the text says the smoke is made by the interpretation of images of light, the dream of humans. So it's all our interpretations of reality. Our beliefs, assumptions, cultural biases, even just the limits of our senses, they all act like filters, creating this obscuring smoke.
So the world we see with all its separations and conflicts and individual identities, it's like a dream, this collective and individual interpretation of the light being reflected in these mirrors. And the mirror itself, that's you, the dreamer.
Exactly. You are the mirror, reflecting light and creating your own unique version of this shared dream through your interpretations and experiences.
And when this guy called himself the Smokey Mirror, it wasn't to put himself down or anything. It was like a reminder that reality is this mirror reflecting light, but our interpretations, the smoke, keep us from fully recognizing our interconnectedness.
He says, I am the smoky mirror because I am looking at myself in all of you, but we don't recognize each other because of the smoke in between us. That smoke is the dream, and the mirror is you, the dreamer.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, if we want to boil down what we've learned from 4introduction.pdf, it's this. Reality might be fundamentally made of light, everything is interconnected, and what we perceive as the world might be like a shared dream that's hiding our true nature as beings of light and love.
And one of the most fascinating things about this ancient perspective is the idea of the smoky mirror. It's saying that the real obstacles to understanding aren't out there in the world, but inside of us, in our own interpretations and beliefs.
So, what aspects of your reality, what you believe to be true, might actually be part of this collective dream?
That's a really good question.
And here's a final thought to ponder. What if you really are a mirror, constantly reflecting and being reflected by everything and everyone? How would that change how you see the world and interact with people? What if we could clear away some of that smoke? What would we see then? Definitely something to think about even after this deep dive is over. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks everyone.